I hope you are doing extremely well this evening. Now, tonight is gonna be another scary stories of the non-paranormal type. So I've got some really terrifying stories for you about some really terrifying and creepy men. I hope that you're all cozied up and you're in the mood to get spooked. Now, with that being said, and of course without further ado, let's get into tonight's stories, shall we? Alright, so the first story was originally posted by a Reddit user called Gorgelina, and their story is called Creepy Neighbour is Stalking Me. Alright, first some background info. So I, 24 female, live with my roommate, 23 female, in an apartment in the suburbs of Atlanta. As you may know, Atlanta is super dangerous and crime riddled right now. So we have a ring peephole camera, perfect for apartments, and a digital lock on our door for safety. Now, on to the story. About 3 months ago, the sweet family from across the hall moved out, and we got a new neighbour. His name is David, and let's just say he's interesting. When we first saw him moving in, we were a bit taken aback by the sheer amount of stuff that he was trying to fit in this tiny one-bedroom apartment. All of it was anime merch and Star Wars memorabilia. You know, it definitely gave me hoarder vibes, but not my business really. When the moving trucks left and a few days had passed, my roommate and I knocked on his door to give him a welcome to the neighbourhood gift, which, you know, is very nice of them. They didn't have to do that. So it was a basket with some baked goods, dog treats, and poop bags for his dog, and seasonal candles. Apparently, this was not the correct thing to do. After that day, David got creepy. It started out innocent enough. He would come to the door whenever he heard me or my roommate coming or going to have a quick chat. Or he would come over regularly to ask for salt or sugar or toilet paper. Sometimes he would ask if we could come over and watch his dog, but within the past 2 weeks, things have escalated. 2 weeks ago, we were out pretty late, partying at the bars near the Braves Stadium. We ended up getting home around 3 a.m, only to find David sitting at the top of the stairs, waiting for us. we saw that, we contacted the complex to let them know that he was acting crazy. They told us to contact the police, so we did. The police told us to contact them if he made any threats, but since we lived in a shared space, they couldn't do anything until he entered our apartment or he threatened us. I assume the complex said something to him because he left us alone for the next 5 days or so. Now this week, he is out of control. He's constantly sitting outside of our apartment. My roommate has started leaving for work an hour earlier so that she doesn't cross paths with him. I cannot leave the apartment during the day because he is constantly waiting outside for me. He has asked me out, left love letters on our door, on our cars, and in our mailbox. I told him once that I wasn't interested, and he told me that he would kill himself if I didn't go on a date with him. Of course, I don't have that in writing, so the police won't do anything. He has also put up a Ring doorbell of his own, so he can track all of our movements, and will leave really creepy sexual notes when we're gone, so we find them when we're back. What? Right. This story was posted in the beginning of March, and by the time I'm filming this, some time has passed, and there have been updates on this, which I will of course share with you as well. So, this is an update from the 14th of March. We met with our landlord last week. Unfortunately, they aren't willing to work with us as much as we expected. They will not remove him from his unit. Since we didn't want to spend a ton of money to move, we asked if we could move units within the complex. The landlord offered us a 1-bedroom unit on the terrace level, so my roommate and I would have to share a room in what is basically the basement of our building. Not ideal. We also spoke to the police, and they said that the notes and letters weren't enough to get someone on stalking or harassment, especially since he lives literally 3 feet away from us. He also said that he probably just thinks you're cute, which, they did keep the Ring videos and said that they would contact us sometime this week after they reviewed all of the footage. We have both moved in with my parents for the time being. Shout out to them for being incredible parents. It really sucks spending more than 2 this door the entire day and the entire night, just waiting for them to come out so you can harass them. This is so wild. I mean, what is the next step? Trying to break into their apartment when they're not there? I mean, David, come on. Get your together, man. Like, this is insane. Now, these Ring cameras, I've got one too, and I can't recommend it enough. It is so good. Now, the way it works is that whenever it detects movement, you can set it to record for a specific time, so you can see, what people are up to in front of your door. It's even got a function where it recognizes when the movement is a person or something else, and that it will only record when it is an actual person. So whenever somebody tries to break in or, steals a package or vandalizes your home or something like that, you've got them on camera. It saves to the cloud and you can take that to the police or to social media, I guess, if you so wished. But I mean, I'm glad that those girls had that footage, because I'm sure that it helped for the police. Don't get me started on the police actually in this case. I always find it so mind-blowing that the police just basically refuse to help until something very serious happens. It always seems to me like somebody has to get hurt first before the police do something which is inherently wrong. If somebody comes to you for help, because that's what the police are supposed to do, they're supposed to help people. If somebody comes to you asking for help and they don't feel safe, it is their duty. It's their duty to do something about it. And not just give this ridiculously misogynistic remark of, oh, he probably just thinks you're cute, like this is. No. I don't agree with this at all. But I am extremely glad that these girls were able to break the lease and move away, because, it is scary how quickly things escalated with this David, and I'm absolutely positive that it would have been even worse if they had stayed there. And, like I said, the next step is probably breaking into their apartment. So I think those girls really dodged a bullet here. Alright, the next story that I've got for you this evening was originally posted by a Reddit user called O0Kitty000. Their story is called "One of the Stupidest Situations I Walked Right Into at 21." This happened a few years ago when I was 21 on a study abroad program in the US. One weekend I had booked a solo stay in Niagara Falls on the US side. I didn't realize at the time that this was quite a notoriously dangerous area. My evening flight ended up being delayed, and I wasn't going to arrive at my hostel till after 11 p.m. Originally, I had booked to stay in an all-female room, or some other bullshit excuse that I would never accept now. So I arrive there and I find my room. As I enter, I notice that there is only one other person in the room, an older looking man who wakes up as I come in. Now I immediately feel uneasy, but being young and naive, I decided to just proceed. He doesn't say much, but he watches me quietly and says that I can turn on the lights if I wished. Now I don't do this. I do my best to get ready for bed quickly, and I get into an empty bunk as far as possible from him and fall into a very broken sleep. In the morning, I wake up to him moving about the room. As I'm still laying in bed, he starts talking to me. Young and naive as I am, I engage in the conversation. He introduces himself and asks me a bit about myself. He ends up asking what I was doing that day. I say exploring, and if I would like to meet up that evening at the falls to walk back to the hostel together. Now, call me stupid, but I thought it was really common for travellers in hostels to do things like this, and this was my first time staying in a hostel. And I assumed that he meant there would be a big group from the hostel all meeting to walk back together. I agree, as I knew I didn't want to walk back to the hostel late by myself, and I really wanted to see the falls at night. We exchange emails and arrange a loose meeting time, and just as he's about to leave, he hesitates, walks over to my bed, kneels down as I'm on the bottom bunk, and he gives me a kiss on the cheek, lips and all. I freeze and he leaves. It might help to mention that he was foreign and I wasn't sure if this was a cultural thing or not. Now, shocked, I realize how stupid I have been and immediately resolve to just not meet him. That night, I would be moving to the old girl's room and I would never have to see him again. Simple. I spent the whole day on the Canadian side of the falls, anxious and mulling over the morning's events. I aim to leave much later than we planned to meet, hoping that he would realize I wasn't coming and just give up. Now around 8 or 9 p.m, I check my emails, and I see that I have been bombarded by emails from him asking where I am, and that he has been waiting for hours. Now, at this point, it is dark, and I am increasingly wary of the walk back to the hostel in the not-so-safe streets. I am also pretty broke, and I cannot afford a taxi. Now, I decide to go against my gut feeling and meet him. After all, he had been waiting for me for a while, and I just didn't want to do the walk on my own. We meet, and, not surprisingly, he is alone. Though I thought that we would leave immediately insists and I decline again. Now he insists more forcefully and he takes my arm. I am incredibly uncomfortable. I can't recall what we were talking about as we walked arm in arm, but I do remember one thing he said. Last night, when you came in and I saw you laying in the bed all by yourself, I just wanted to hold you in my arms like a baby. At this point, I realize that I can no longer let my fear of offending him or being impolite stop me. I realize that I am in real danger. This older, larger, scary stranger is literally holding me and expressing highly inappropriate feelings towards me. I tug my arm back and do not respond. I look around and realize he has led me past the hostel. We have missed our street, I state. Oh, have we? He responds, looking confused. Now I immediately start walking back the way we needed to go, faster now, a few steps in front of him. It doesn't take long for us to reach the hostel. I inform him that I'm going to my room, and he asks if he can contact me via email in the future, and I shrug. As a goodbye, he kisses me once more on the cheek, and I quickly rush to my new all-girls bedroom. Now thankfully, he had an early flight the next morning, but I was on edge all night, not even daring to leave my new room for the bathroom in fear he would be waiting for me. He did end up emailing me a few weeks later, and this time I just ignored him. Now before you call me stupid, please know that I know I was incredibly idiotic. Every instinct told me every step of the way to stop and let my meekness and fear of conflict rule my actions. This could have ended so much worse. I urge anyone who ends up in a similar situation to trust your instincts and never let yourself simply end up in such a dangerous situation. I really feel for this girl, primarily and most importantly because I've been in that situation. I understand that it is not always easy to just act off of your gut feeling. There's an irrational fear of offending them, of being impolite, of seeming rude, and I am definitely not calling this Redditor stupid. It is irrational and we can't help it. Some of us suffer from it more than others. I'm somebody who suffers from exactly the same thing. But I am trying to work on this. I am trying to not care. If I offend a total stranger who is being incredibly creepy towards me in the first place. Now I've spoken to this Redditor and they are also of disappointing or offending people or seeming rude, which is crazy. I mean, I've told you guys this, we really have to stand up for ourselves because nobody else is going to do it. We are really responsible for our own safety, and if we have a chance to get out of a situation that feels off, get out of there. Take it with both hands. The world, sadly, is full of creeps, and that isn't about to change anytime soon. So until then, we need to make sure that we keep ourselves safe. We also, and this is also very important, we need to urge mothers to educate their sons so we don't end up with creeps like this who think that their behaviour is okay. At any rate, I don't think this Redditor is stupid at all, but I am incredibly, incredibly glad that nothing terrible happened to her. Because it really could have done. She was in that room alone with this creep. He could have done whatever he wanted. So glad that on the second night she moved to the old girl's room. Alright, so I've got one more story for you guys. This one was originally posted by a Reddit user called Emmmlee. Their story is called Elevator Creep. This happened to me a few years ago while travelling. I was private tutoring and my boss sent me to his office to pick up my paycheck at the end of the first month. He gave me the address, so me and my boyfriend at the time drove there and he waited outside for me. It was a tall building and I approached what looked like a security guard. I showed him the address that I had written down to make sure I was in the right place. He studied it, nodded, and told me it was on the 5th floor, and he showed me to the direction of the elevator. As I got in the elevator, he stepped in with me. He pressed number 5. Now I assumed that it was his job to escort people to the right floors. He was staring at me up and down the entire time. I glanced down at the address my boss had written down and I realised that it said 2nd floor, not the 5th. I turned to the security guard and I started to say, I think we are a little confused as this says 2nd floor. He made out that he didn't understand me because of the language barrier. So I started to repeat the number 2 in Vietnamese instead. Now, he completely ignored me and instead turned and gave me this creepy smile. Now it still sends shivers down my spine when I think about it. He reached out and started to stroke my hair, saying, "So beautiful." I stepped out and I looked around, and there was absolutely nothing there. The floor was under construction. There was paint and dirty old sheets all over the floor. I ran towards the window and looked outside to see if I could get my boyfriend's attention. It was too high up. I couldn't. The creepy guy had gotten out, and he was pointing me down an empty corridor. He looked really frustrated now. He was also blocking the elevator so I couldn't get back in. I pretended to walk towards the corridor, and he followed me. When I got to the door, I bolted back to the elevator and I started to press the button to the ground floor. Now he followed me, and whenever the doors closed, he would just press the button from the other side and they would open again. Oh my god, that is so creepy. He was shouting at me in Vietnamese and he looked angry with me. Adrenaline had kicked in and I was literally thinking about anything I could use or how I could defend myself if he tried anything with me. I started screaming as loud as I possibly could to make him back off. As I pressed the ground floor button and the doors began to close again, he smiled at me once more. This awful, creepy smile that I think about all the time. My heart was beating in my mouth as I imagined what would be waiting for me when the doors inevitably opened again. To my surprise, the elevator started moving towards the ground floor this time, and I managed to get out of it. I ran out as fast as possible and was crying by the time I got to my boyfriend. He wanted to go back inside, but I stopped him and made him drive home fast. Probably the smartest thing to do. Now, the same day I called my boss and I explained what had happened. Turns out I wasn't even in the right building, never mind the right floor. I blame myself for getting the wrong address, but, different country, etc. I don't know why the guy in there pretended that I was, or what his intentions were with me, or even why he decided to just let me go. Maybe he was just trying to scare me, or maybe he was just trying his luck with me. I have no idea, but I think about it from time to time, or I tell the story again to someone, and it really creeps me out to think of what could have been. I've never gotten in an elevator with a man again, ever. I just cannot get over how terrifying a story this is. Imagine being stuck on an empty floor with somebody like that. And when I read that whenever she was pressing the button of the elevator to go back down to the ground floor level, he would push the button on the other side to open the doors again. That is the stuff for nightmares. I'm telling you, that so glad he did. Because honestly, I don't think this would have ended well if he hadn't. So glad that this Redditor got out safe. Sadly,